light come and surround me.
That's when I had my life review.
I promised to make it different.
We don't remember them while we're here until we start remembering.
All I could feel was love.
What happens when we die? Nobody knows for certain, but the 5 people in this video got a glimpse, and they came back to tell us about it. These aren't rumors or secondhand accounts. These are real people, on record, describing what they saw, felt, and heard on the other side. Each story is different, each person is different, but they all share one thing. None of them are afraid of death anymore. Starting with number 1. When I spoke to Jeffrey Olson, I wasn't expecting to feel what I felt. His story starts in tragedy, real devastating tragedy. He went through 18 surgeries. He had his leg amputated, buried his wife and youngest child, and somehow, he's one of the most at-peace people I've ever spoken to. Let's hear it in his own words.
I was a regular guy, grew up on a family farm, worked in marketing, ran an advertising agency. I had been a Division I athlete. I was probably a red personality, like, gosh, let's go, let's win, let's beat the other guy, let's, do all those things. I was married, I had 2 children, I had a lovely wife, but I was a pretty mainstream, typical person. When the NDE happened, it was the result of an automobile accident. And I was young. I was 33 years old. It's been 28 years ago. And some time has passed. I couldn't talk about it for almost a decade. But yeah, we had a really bad car crash. It was a single car rollover, and I was driving the car. One of the most difficult parts of the story is I may have dozed off. I may have just nodded off and swerved to the right and then overcorrected to the left, which caused me to lose control of the car, and then the car began to roll. And the first thing I became aware of was my 7-year-old son in the back seat behind me, crying hysterically. And as a father, I knew, gosh, I've got to get to my boy. I've got to get to my son. And that's when I realized that no one else was crying. That's when I knew, and I was very much aware that my wife and my youngest son had been killed in the accident. It was a horrible feeling. It was a very, there aren't words to really explain. Here I am pinned, I'm losing consciousness. I've got a hysterical 7-year-old I can't get to. I don't know how badly he's hurt, but based on his crying, I believe he's okay. He's hurt, but he's going to be okay. But my wife and my youngest son were not okay. And I was aware of that. I knew at the scene of the accident that they had passed. And that was the setting. I don't share that to be morbid, but that was the setting. And as I blacked out or went out, the lights went out, but then I felt light come. I felt light come and surround me. It was like tangible light. It felt comforting, like it was holding me in this horrible, terrible situation. And it felt like I was rising above the accident scene. And I was actually a little bit confused, like, what's going on? Because, gosh, now I could breathe. There was no pain. I was very much alive. I suppose my spirit or soul left my body, but I was very much alive. I was held in this light, and then my wife, who I knew was deceased at the scene, suddenly she was there in the light with me. She was there and very much alive, beautiful. She didn't display any of the injuries that took her life. However, she was emphatic that, Jeff, you can't stay. You've got to go. You can't be here. You've got to go back. And we had this conversation. We had this conversation as if I stayed with her, our 7-year-old son, our surviving son, would be orphaned. And for whatever reason, she could not come back, but I could. And she was just emphatic, saying, "You've got to go back. You've got to go back." And we made a choice. We made a choice, and I chose to come back. That was a very profound goodbye, to make that decision. And then coming back, I mean, we have no idea how powerful our thoughts are. I didn't have to think about how do I go back when I made that choice, when I had that intention, I'm going back. Then, whew, I was whisked away and suddenly found myself moving about a very busy level 1 trauma. I had no concept of time in this bubble of light, but I later realized that people had arrived at the scene. I was told all of this. People had arrived at the scene. Spencer, my 7-year-old, was banged up pretty good, but he was going to be okay. I had to be extricated from the car and life flighted or airlifted, to the nearest level 1 trauma center. I didn't know any of that. I knew I'd crashed. I knew I'd said this profound goodbye, and then I was wandering about the hospital, very much aware, almost like a 360-degree awareness of the patients, the doctors, the nurses, even the families of the patients. It's like I knew everything. I was aware, and I was experiencing it in such a way that everyone I encountered, I knew them. I knew them perfectly. I knew their thoughts. I knew their love. I knew their hope. I knew their motivations. I even knew they're angry. And, I felt and knew everything, but there was no judgment of any of it. As I felt them, there was just this profound sense of love. And I was having this profound experience, and then I came upon a body I didn't feel anything from, which I thought was odd. And I stepped closer to look, and that's when I realized that's me. That's me. And yet it wasn't me. I was having this connected experience, but there was my body. There was my skin suit, that we go through this life in. And I stepped closer and looked, and there was a profound sorrow at how broken my body was. And at the same time, this magnificent reverence. It's like, wow, there's my body. I took it for granted. I didn't ever think about the fact that I didn't have to remind my heart to beat. I didn't have to think about my lungs breathing. There I was looking at this magnificent machine of the body, and I knew I had agreed to get back in it, and mine was so broken. It was so banged up. And again, just thoughts, intention. I didn't have to figure out how do I get back in, but it was just the decision, like the intention. I'm going in, and then boom, I was back in the body, back into the heaviness. The grief, the trauma, the pain, both physically and emotionally, the guilt. I was driving the car. It was very heavy to be in the hospital. I was ventilated. They had a big tube down my throat during the breathing for my lungs. My legs were immobile, having been crushed. This arm was immobile, having been torn out. And they eventually tied down this hand because I kept grabbing at everything. But there I was back in the body, but it had this profound out-of-body experience. Very conscious, outside of the body. It wasn't in my brain. It was something bigger, something different. I call it a spirit or a soul. Consciousness. There's all kinds of words for it, but yeah, I was very conscious outside of my body, and then boom, back in it. Still with the same consciousness, but with all the physical trauma that went with that. The hospital was interesting. I was in the hospital for almost 6 months. I had 18 surgeries in all, putting me back together. My family was so supportive. I was so lucky. I was blessed that way to have, brothers and family and even my workmates, everyone was so supportive as I healed. And perhaps the most profound experience was at the end of my hospital stay. And it may be worth pointing out that the two most profound experiences were at the scene of the accident, before morphine or any narcotics had been administered to me. And then at the end of my hospital stay, when I was out of ICU, I was out of surgical recovery, I was out of regular hospital, I was just in the rehabilitation wing. And I was off of the heavy narcotics. And gosh, I was such a mess. I had done so much, but my left leg was amputated, my right leg was in a brace sticking straight out. This arm was in a sling. They'd been working on the shoulder. I had a colostomy bag because of the ruptured intestines. But I was finally able to sleep on my side, which is my natural way of sleeping. I had laid so long on my back that I'd rubbed all the hair off the back of my head. I was bald on the back side of my head. And one particular night, I was sleeping. I had rolled on my side, and I was sleeping, but it was strange because I became very I became conscious of the fact that I was sleeping peacefully. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I mean, I'm sleeping, but I'm conscious that I'm sleeping peacefully. I had been unconscious. I had certainly fallen asleep, but I was sleeping so peacefully. And then I felt that light come again, that same light as at the accident scene. Comforting. I was in so much grief at the loss of half the family. Again, the light surrounded me. It felt like I was rising above the hospital bed. But this time the light, it dispensed. It disappeared. It went away. And I was in the most beautiful, incredible place. There's words like heaven or the spirit world or the other side. The only word that comes close to what I was experiencing is I felt as if I was home. I was home. It's like oh my gosh, I know this. This is so familiar. It's so welcoming. And I was elated and I was whole. I had both legs and both feet and I was not injured and I began running. I began running thinking I'm whole and I'm home. And it was such a physical experience. I could feel the energy of the ground beneath my feet. I could feel the intelligence in my toes and in my calves and in my thighs. And I began running thinking I'm whole. I'm healed. This was all a bad dream. I'm home. And as I was having this experience, I had the knowing. That was just a knowing I wasn't there to stay. And about that same time, there was this corridor off to my left, and I knew intuitively I'm to go that way. I'm to go down this corridor. And I did. I began working my way down the corridor, and then I could see at the end of the corridor was a crib. Now, Griffin, my little boy, was just a toddler at the time of the accident. He was still sleeping in a crib. He was 14 months old, just barely starting to walk and talk a little bit. And so I was very intrigued by this crib. I went down this corridor. I got to the crib. I looked in the crib, and there was my little boy. And he was sleeping beautifully. And as a father, I swept him up and I held him. And it felt, it was so tangible, so physical. I don't know if you've ever picked up a sleeping child, but there's a weight, there's a heat to them, and I could hold him, and I felt him against me, and he felt solid, and his little rib cage was expanding, and I could feel his breath on my neck. I'm holding my son, and yet I'm very much aware he's here, because I crashed the car. I fell asleep or dozed off or overcorrected, and his life was cut short. The guilt was bubbling up, and I could feel this presence coming closer, closer behind me, and I'm holding my son, and the presence is right behind me, and I'm weeping, and I had this thought. The thought was, I hope I can be forgiven. And in having that thought, and this almost felt tangible too, I had the thought, I'm holding my son, and then these divine arms just came around and held us both. And it's almost like we just became one, like there was this higher perspective. It's like I became the divine, and I'm holding my son, and then the download came, just this communication. I'm having this thought of, I hope I can be forgiven. And what was communicated by this magnificent being who held me, I'll say God, was there's nothing to forgive. And it was communicated to me, my will is your will. That's how much you're loved. My will is that you have free will. You get to choose. And you can be mad at God your whole life because this accident happened and it wasn't stopped, or you weren't prompted to wake up or whatever. And that would be okay. That was still love. I could beat myself up for the rest of my life because I was driving the car, and that was a choice. But I was given another choice. I was told, you can give your son. You can choose to hand him over. You can trust and hand him over, and therefore exercise your will. And in all that love and all that peace and all that beauty, I kissed my little boy, and I handed him over. My son, my little 7-year-old who survived the accident, he didn't have an experience. He didn't have an out-of-body or near-death experience at all. And it was interesting coming home to him. Like I say, I was in the hospital almost 6 months. He'd gone to stay with my brother. And I didn't even get to go home to my house. I was going home to my brother's house when I left the hospital because I still needed home help and physical therapy and all the things that were going on. In fact, I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't even get in the wheelchair myself with all the injuries. That my brothers would have to pick me up and put me in a little electric wheelchair that I could drive with my one arm that was operating. It was time to go home, and my brothers came to get me. They loaded me up. We were going home, and I was so worried about Spencer, my 7-year-old. How's he going to deal with this? How's he going to accept me? I mean, I was all broken down in a wheelchair. I had been the rough and tumble dad, and I was so concerned about him. And as we arrived at the house, we pulled up and pulled into the driveway, and I could see him, 7 years old, watching out the window, looking as my brothers, lifted me into the wheelchair, his uncles, and he's watching his uncles lift his dad in the wheelchair. And I was just mortified, thinking, how's he going to accept this? The amputation and the colostomy bag. And he had seen me in the hospital, but I was under the covers, and, but now we were on his turf. And as I got in the wheelchair, he came running out of the house, and he ran toward me. But he ran right past me. And I thought, it's too much. He can't deal with all of this. And so I began to navigate the wheelchair up to the ramp. My brothers had built a ramp for me to drive it into the house, and they were emphatic I do it on my own, which I did. And I was so concerned. And as I turned the wheelchair, I just looked to see where Spencer had gone. I just looked to see where he went. And he actually had run across the street, and he began to knock on all the neighbors' doors. And he was saying, come out. My dad has made it home. Come see my dad. And, he eventually ran back, and he did throw himself on my lap, which just about killed me because I still had all the sutures from the abdominal repair. And I bring this up for a specific reason. There I was holding my little boy who survived. I share this because it was a profound moment. There I was in a wheelchair holding my surviving son. And it was no less divine than being in the other realm holding my son that had passed. Suddenly heaven was right here. There's so many things going on in the world, but wow, if I can affect the people in my own little tribe, the people under my roof, my family and closest friends, and if I can see the beauty in the simple things like sunset or a butterfly or a snowflake or those little things that are all around us that really do to me whisper of the divine, take those in. Just take a moment to be still and connect with the beauty that's around you in nature, in the sky, in the earth, and let that be our guide. We can learn so much by just watching what's around us. And if I can see the divinity in my neighbor, then I can embrace them a way to say, oh, wow, and they're a manifestation of the Creator. The challenge might be to look in the mirror and say, okay, do I see the divinity within myself? That self-love, that's a big deal.
I hope you like that story. Jeffrey started with tragedy, but ended in inspiration. Kristen Newman's story, however, began on an ordinary morning. No crash, no illness, just a regular day. And then she was gone. What she describes from the other side is one of the most detailed accounts I've come across. A life review, seeing exactly how her actions affected everyone around her, and a journey into what she calls heaven. She was reunited with people she describes as her spiritual family, and then she came back. And what came back wasn't the same person who left. Here's her story.
My spiritual awakening started in 2016. My near-death experience happened due to a severe heart issue that I still have in 2023. But I wound up having to stay home because of my heart issues. I was a banker for just shy of 15 years before that. So just to kind of give about my heart issues, my plumbing is good. I have total electrical issues in my heart. I have supra and ventricular tachycardia and a lot of PVCs, so premature ventricular beats, or bigeminy they're called too, but a lot of electrical issues. So my heart rate goes really fast. And I get very sick. It happens all the time. I don't really have a normal heart rhythm. So I've had 4 or 5 other heart surgeries to try and fix the issues. But that morning, it was a Friday morning, it was November 3rd, it was my husband's birthday. My husband's birthday, he's in construction. Our daughter at the time, she has since graduated from college, but she was in college at the time and she was supposed to be up and out already. So I was running a channeling class, a group channeling class that morning. It was around, I don't even know, 8:30, something like that. And I was going to take my shower and I felt really good that morning. That's the craziest thing to me that I'm still wrapping my brain around now, because this was November 3rd, 2023. And I felt really good that morning. I had some blips and, that kind of stuff that I can feel, but I really felt good. Like I would have driven in the car or gone out somewhere, if I didn't have class, type of thing. So my husband, since he was home on his birthday, he wound up laying in bed and reading. And the dogs were in here with us. Emily was in her room, but he'll normally be in the other room, maybe, playing online games or something like that, watching TV in the den. But he decided to stay in here, had the bathroom door open, and I went into the shower and I'm doing my face routine and I'm facing the shower head. And it wasn't, I couldn't communicate or say anything. I just instinctively leaned against the wall. And in that moment, out of my crown or the top of my head, I came out and was facing myself. And I knew exactly what was happening. Because that's the thing, when you do this type of work, it prepares you from when you do transition, is what I've learned. So I was facing myself and I slid down the shower, and we don't have glass or anything. We just renovated like a year beforehand. We used to have glass. So I slid down and I hit my head on the marble where you step into the shower. And I remember seeing, now I can't see myself crystal clear. I knew it was me, but it's kind of hazy. But I knew it was me. I saw myself turn blue. I could see my daughter's face, and then I could, see other little things. But my husband said, well, whatever you did, you got the dog's attention. And he looked up, saw me laying there. He's like, you turned blue, then you turned purple. Thank God our daughter was home. So he screamed for Emily, because every time he stopped doing chest compressions, I would start turning colors again. So if she was not here, divinely orchestrated all of this. If she wasn't here, he would have had to stop what he was doing, call, get all the animals in the room, because I have 3 dogs and 2 cats. So she was able to do all of that, and then get the EMTs, usher them in to be able to help. But I don't know, they said it took 6 minutes for them to get here, and then however long it was beforehand. So I'm thinking, because we don't know what time anything was, so my heart was stopped. It had to have been 10 minutes, if not a little more, because when they got here, my husband was in the truck with Emily, and the chief came over to him and said, okay, we got her heart started. And he goes, and that's when it really hit him as to the extent of what was happening. So, I remember seeing when they intubated me, I saw like this white thing, and I could hear Kristen, Kristen, because they keep calling your name. I since met the paramedics, and they said, yes, we were constantly telling you, Kristen, we're doing this, Kristen, we're doing that. Can you hear us, Kristen? Can you respond? And then I was just gone after that. That's when I went straight to God. That's where I went. No doubt, no question in my mind as to who that was. And God was this huge ball of light. And when you look at a sunset and you see that type of yellow that has like a hint of orange in it, that's the color of God that was emanated. You could look straight at God. I hate saying he or she, because God embodies masculine and feminine. I say God, source, whatever you want to call, but it was God, and I was there. And I was swirling around, because it was like, wow, I remember feeling what it was like to not have a body, which was glorious. But the biggest thing that sticks with me now is that I remember not feeling the lower vibrational emotions we have here. The jealousy, the anger, the anxiety, all those things, the worry, all these different things. I didn't have any of that. I was totally free. And it was, wow, humans hold on to a lot. It was the realization in that moment, like, oh my gosh, I forgot what this felt like. It was coming back, like you wake up out of a crazy dream, but I was waking up to true reality, basically, and had a conversation with God. I was told that I did really well, that God was proud of me, and that God is proud of everyone. I had a choice if I wanted to stay and come back. But I remember looking down, because these rays of light were coming onto me. And I was looking down, and these rays of light, because I didn't have a body, but you have the awareness like you do So my awareness went down and I saw these rays of light coming to me, and God said, look at them. You can hear and go to everybody. So it was like teaching me, remember how to do this. You remember? So it's like we're coming back and you're woozy coming back out of it, basically. So I remember looking down and I can hear Chris, Christy, Kristen, all of my nicknames. Some people were screaming, some were crying, and I can go to people. I could not see my husband. I could not. They didn't show me him. I remember seeing his hands on the side of the bed holding on to the railings that were up, because I was strapped and the railings were up, and I saw his white knuckles. He was holding so tight, but that's all I could see. And my mom said, Kristen, you don't want to see what he looked like. He was just a mess. I could not see me, which drives me crazy because it's disassociation of this happened. Oh my gosh. But it was amazing. All of these prayers for Kristen, this love that I felt from everybody. So when I was with God and he was celebrating the life that I've lived, and how proud he was of me, that's when I had my life review. And the life review was all over the place, everywhere you looked. Everybody experiences things different, and everyone's soul is different and responds in different ways. The way my soul responds, because I've had a conversation with my guides as to why this occurred. Because I'm like, you always hear that you see things that you've maybe hurt other people, but it's everything from the other person's perspective, not your own, because you already lived that. You know that it's about everybody else. And I saw everything I did good. And it's not that I'm perfect by any means whatsoever. It's just I could feel how making someone laugh, what that does to somebody else, how it makes them feel, how I made them feel when I smiled or gave a compliment. I could see a few things that happened when I was little. Handing a flower to my mom is the most vivid image. My mom was wearing a blue dress. I was in a little dress and I was handing her like a buttercup flower. And I remember my mom just being so loving. I could feel how, thank you, her happiness and joy from me giving her that flower and being little and just all of that. And I remember how it feels. And you think you would know how it feels, right, as a human, because when someone does something for you and it can make you want to do something for someone else. But it was so different seeing all of these memories and how making someone laugh and they were going through something that I didn't know, and me making them laugh helped lift them up. So all these different things came back and I was able to witness it. I decided at that time, I'm going back as Kristen. And there's like, her story's not over yet. I'm going back. So from there, I went to this like welcoming area. Everyone was there. Everyone I've ever channeled. Animals that I've lost. Animals that I've channeled. People that I know. Like I said, everyone I've channeled, I saw Jesus that was there. I know my whole family was there. But it's not like they were right front and center, which I thought was so weird. Front and center was my friend, her son, Trent, who had passed away several years ago at only 18 years old, about 18 years old. And I've channeled Trent before, several times, very connected with him. He was right in the front and he was standing there. I could see him. We had bodies and he did this smile and one side of his mouth was higher than the other. He smirked and we embraced. And he was like, oh my gosh, hi. And and then having an interaction with Jesus, which I feel very connected to Jesus as well. And he put his hand on my heart and I actually put it on a bracelet because I wanted to just always have it with me. And he just said, I am, you are, we are. Just that interconnectedness. And from there, because I said that I was going to come back, I can't remember, it was before going to the Great Hall as I know it to be, but I was given, so I practiced healing, Kundalini Reiki, Rahani celestial healing, and then I was spontaneously given something else and an amplification of my Kundalini Reiki healing spontaneously. And it was like a year or so that I was given this before my NDE, and it's called, I didn't know a name for it yet. It was my own healing modality, I was told, but I would understand more later. So because I was coming back, they said, okay, we need to infuse your human body and your spirit with this energy. So I had like this double helix of energies going through my being to fully infuse me with these energies. And from there, going to what I call the Great Hall. It could be called the Akashic Records as well. And it looked like a huge, beautiful library to me. And all books all over here, the ceilings were just, they're so tall. Huge, tall. Huge window with even like black lined panes. And I remember looking out there, and there were 3 planets that were out there. And I look back and I'm at a table. And for those that know Harry Potter, again, the Marauders map. So the map moves and you can see people on it and all that. It's interactive. That's how this was. So it was blue. And colors on the other side, those that meditate and connect with spirit, the colors you see are not of here. It's not this kind of purple, that kind of thing. It's different. It's alive. So I was looking at this blue map, and there were 2 beings in front of me. They were beings of light. My higher self was next to me. And I was, okay, we're going to do this. And I remember saying, we're going to make it good. If I'm coming back, we're going to make it good. The crappy part is I couldn't, like, what was it? I remember saying that, but what was it? Like, I guess it's cheating if you know. But I did all of these things, and I was putting stuff on, and no, we're not going to do that. And I'll give her a choice here, all these different things. And I was back. And when I was back, I was back. Now, my human body was intubated. They didn't know what was going to happen with me. My daughter loves looking at people's eyes, and she would take pictures of them too, because they look like the nebula, and they're not just black or brown or green. There's just depths, and they're so beautiful and unique to everybody. They are the windows of the soul, truly, because my daughter said, I opened my eyes, because this was, remember, between 8:30 in the morning that this happened. I was intubated from there, and then the entire day and into the night. It was really early in the morning. I don't know what time that I woke up. But my eyes had opened, and she looked at me like, Mom, and the lady that was there, the nurse, said, sweetie, she's not there. It's her body's reaction. And Emily said, Mom, those were not your eyes. She goes, there was nothing there. They were blank. It wasn't my eyes. So always look at people's eyes to see if they're there. And, she was just talking about little things, like she was holding my hand and she said, you have a little hand, but when you're not there and you were gone, it was so heavy. So, because, when I hold her hand, I would rub, my thumb on her finger or something. And she's like, it was just so weird. But when I said I was back, and my husband had said, You were back." Like, I opened my eyes and I was like, "Hey," and I didn't know what was going on, because I was all intubated, but I just woke right up. So when I told him I'm back, he's like, "Oh, you were back right away." um, but it was interesting things because my mom, who's in her early 80s, my parents, when my husband called them and they were on their way, they're about 45 minutes away. My mom said, because she's takes my classes and I've, talked with her about how to connect. And she said, "Guys, you got to give me a sign that Chrissy's okay. You got to give me a sign that she's okay." And she goes, "Kristen, there were no birds. We're in Florida. She goes, there were no birds. And there are birds everywhere." She goes, "There were no birds. When we got to the hospital, birds everywhere. Like, all at the hospital, they were all right there. And then when they got in, um, the head nurse introduced herself. Now, I call my mom my tree, and I'm her apple because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And when she met the nurse, she goes, "Hi, my name is Apollonia. My friends call me Apple, and I'm Kristen's nurse." And my mom just, I guess, kind of looked at her a certain way, and she goes, "Yes, my name's Apollonia. My friends call me Apple." But mom said, "It's the craziest feeling because I get this. You can feel your human self, your ego, your human self, and you can feel your spiritual self." And she said, "I had such calm just come over me that I knew everything was going to be okay, but yet my ego was freaking out at the same time because I was looking at you like this and all of that." And when I woke up, I remember happy, all the time happy. There were funny things. I was making jokes about things I couldn't remember. So I was actually Dory from what is that, Nemo, and I couldn't remember more than like a few seconds, and then it got longer and longer, and they had to ask me questions and everything. But it was like funny little silly things. But I remember after my NDE, I was so agitated because I couldn't see myself. Did I die wrong? I was sick because my ego's back. It's like, did I die wrong? What happened? Why couldn't I see myself? And my guide said, "Because you need to understand you're not your body. You're not your body." And I was on cloud nine. I remember like into February of 2024. And my husband, who loves Batman, we're high school sweethearts, and he has all his life. And we were sitting in the truck, and I remember just smiling, and I was looking because it was one of those sunsets, and I just kind of say, "Hi, God," because it was that color of God. And I was just smiling, and my husband looked at me and he goes, "Why do you look like you want to kill Batman?" I said, "I don't look like the Joker." So he was teasing me, but it's like this amazing, blissful feeling. And my mom said, "The look on your face was so childlike, just like you were when you were a child." And when I was talking with somebody else about it recently, they're like, "Because you don't have your full ego back. You're just total bliss, and that's how children are. We can learn so much from them." When you had these beautiful souls that are newly here, they remember things, they can see things, all of that. And then, around 7 or 8 years old is when the conditioning and all of that comes in, and that can go away or whatever, or they're taught, "Don't talk about that." But my mom said, "You looked just like you did when you were a kid with this thing sticking out." And I was just like, "Hi, how are you?" I was just happy all the time. We are loved beyond anything that we can comprehend. I can try to express through human words, but everything there is telepathic. So it's like the words are just so different, the way that they feel. But we are so loved beyond words. We're all welcome in the kingdom of heaven. To see everybody, it's us that needs to forgive ourselves. Meditation can be walking meditations, exercising, chanting, mantras, binaural beats, all these different things, floating in the pool and just laying there. And the more you meditate and practice that mindfulness, what I've noticed is I can be quiet. I can just sit and not have a thought. But it's important too to meditate in the noise. The dogs are barking because Amazon's dropping off stuff. There are kids riding bikes, so they keep barking. And then my husband's yelling at the screen because he can't pass a board in a game, and all these different things. But when you meditate in that, they show me a hurricane. You become the eye of the hurricane, and everything's going around you, but you have this calm in the center. You can center yourself and ground yourself, and you notice you get through things faster, easier. You raise your vibration better. You're able to flow through life situations instead of fighting it better. I'm not having as many thoughts. Some days it's screaming goats in there, and I'm like, okay, let's do something different today. And that's when my guides call it humaning. So I'll garden and do things that I love and enjoy to raise my vibration and to get into my body. All of those practices, you may think you stink at it, but what you're going to notice is that this just happened and I didn't get mad. Or I did get mad, but I didn't hold a grudge as long as I used to. I don't have as many thoughts right now. I'm not dwelling on this. So it's all of these things that you notice, and then you're really honing in on the good part of spiritual journey, because you have the inner standing and you have more of this calm and you're centered. And it's a really amazing and powerful place to be. So when something's happening, okay, I reacted, I'm having emotions about it, I'm going to feel emotions because that's why we're here, I'm not going to ignore them. How do I get through this? And then I trust everything's happening best case scenario. So it's powerful.
Wow. Christine's story still gives me chills to this day, but I'll be honest, the next one caught me completely off guard. Sandra Lee Rose didn't go look for answers about life and death, and when she bled out during a medical emergency, she got them anyway. A life review, a reunion, and a being of pure light that gave her something to carry back. Here's her story.
I was a lady in my late 30s. I had, I had my kids. I had a tumor that started in my abdomen the size of a little walnut, and in 3 weeks' time, I had a cantaloupe in my belly, and something was very, very wrong, growing very, very fast. And the doctor said, I know you're very young, Sandy, but I've had all the children I want to have. It's okay. It's all right. So they did the surgery, and I'd had months of different biopsies, and everything was horrible. And I had the surgery. I thought, oh, hallelujah, the cancer's gone, and it's over. I don't have to worry anymore. And the nurse said, do you want to go for a walk? Yeah, I want to go for a walk. Well, remember, no, it's a literal thing, because my tummy was opened up big enough to, take care of a cantaloupe. Well, I got up and I started walking down the hallway. Well, waddling is a better word for it. I was waddling, but it was so nice to be out of my bed and to feel I finally have a new lease on life. Cancer is gone and I'm going to be fine. And a nurse grabbed me by the shoulders and she pulled me back and said, Sandra, stand up straight. Well, I was bent over because my tummy was really sore. It was burning. It was very sore from all the surgery. I remember feeling searing pain. I remember getting back into my room and crawling into my bed saying, thank God I'm back in my bed. I slept. I remember waking up and it was dark. And I thought, oh, that's okay. My roommate had the television on so I could see her TV flickering, but I thought, oh gosh, I feel wet. I think I've wet the bed. Oh dear, this is not good. I'm embarrassed, right? Oh dear. So I said to my roommate, I couldn't reach the call button because my arm was on a rigid IV board, and of course call buttons are, so I said, please turn on your button, tell the nurse I think I wet myself. And the nurse came in, they turned on the lights, and all I remember are the color red, my screams, and her screams. I had bled up through my blanket. That's a lot of blood. I was bleeding out. I lifted up out of my body like this, and all of a sudden I kind of looked down and I thought, ooh, that's me down there. That's kind of interesting, floating around the top of the hospital room. And, my doctor, O'Keefe, was down there, working on me feverishly, and the nurses trying to stop the blood. And I was kind of up here floating around saying, that's interesting. And then I kind of turned somehow, and I noticed that the ceiling had opened up into a big aperture. Now, I know I'm in a hospital room, but I could see the sky. And through no effort of my own, I started to float up out of that room, up into the sky. I looked down, there's the hospital. There's Hudson River, there's the bridge, there's the falls, Glens Falls. There's my house. This is really neat. It's like flying in a Cessna, a little airplane this level. All of a sudden, I was up the cloud level where the jets are. And then all of a sudden, I started to accelerate, going very, very fast through space. Now, people will tell you often they have NDEs. They've been in a white tunnel, they've been in a black tunnel, they've been in a black void. Mo, I went through the stars. I saw galaxies, I saw beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stars. I don't know how long I was flying. Then, in a distance, I could see a light. And the light got brighter and brighter as I got closer and closer. It was like a horizon. As I got closer and closer, I started to decelerate. I got slower and slower. And I saw a city, a walled city, green, beautiful spires. It just glistened like ice, like diamonds. It was beautiful. And I remember as I got closer, I could see that there was somebody down by the gate. And it was an archway. And as I got closer, I was on the ground, I had landed, and that person was my grandfather. Now, you always wonder, who are you going to see? I figured it would be my brother Billy. No, it was Grandpa, but now I look back, okay, it makes sense. Well, I was so happy to see him because when he died so fast, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. He had a circulatory problem in his legs, and they had amputated one leg. Well, the grandpa that was there was a young grandpa with 2 legs. He was whole, and it was my grandfather. And this is beautiful, this garden is, he said, come with me. So I thought, okay, I must be in heaven because this is this place, right? And I'm walking along with Grandpa, and I see the next garden courtyard, and there are flowers of every color. And we don't have colors in our world, but they do. And now all the fragrances blended. They weren't they were just beautiful. And the leaves seemed to glisten, and the trees glistened, and the water fountains, and I could hear birds. I could hear music, but I didn't hear people. And I was just touching everything and talking to Grandpa about how happy I was to be with him and how much I loved him and how nice he had been to me all my life, and thanked him for all those things. He said, well, Sandy, we need to go along now. Well, there was this long colonnade of columns going out that way. And he started to walk me down that way. And I wanted to touch everything, but we need to go, Sandra. Okay, we're going. He took me into another courtyard, and then he took me to a building, and he said, I can't go with you. You have to go in here alone. I didn't want to go without Grandpa. I didn't know what was in there. This is a beautiful place, but I didn't have my, you have to go in. Well, I didn't want to go in, but I did. And I walked into this room, very bright light. The room was very, very bright, beautiful. In the middle of the room, there was an ornate table and a very bright entity sitting at the table. And I remember hearing the voice, don't be afraid. I was afraid. Sandra, don't be afraid. It's okay. Come in. Oh, that was a nice voice. So he said, Sandra, come here. So I walked closer to this entity, and he had, how you stand in front of your parents when you've done something wrong. He looked at me for a while, like he just kind of stared at me. He was looking into my soul. He knew me, every cell in me, right? And he said, Sandra, I gave you a second life. I died before. I had polio, and I died with polio. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And God brought me back, and the other 9 kids died. Yes, he had given me a second life. I always felt guilty. So he said, I gave you a second life. But what of difference, what of value have you done with your life? Have you made a difference in the lives of other people? I said, well, I've been a good mother, but... And I kind of thought a minute, more than a minute, and I said, I don't think I've really made a difference. But I said, I know you'd let me stay, but I have 3 kids back home. And I really think that they need me as their mom rather than just their dad. Please, dear God, if you let me go back to Eric and Katrina, my twins, and Bob, my youngest one, I promise to make a difference. I will commit my life. I will promise to make a difference in the lives of other people in your name. Please, let me go back. Well, I was back in my body. Oh, did I hurt. I was hurting terribly. Let me tell you about the polio. In 1953, there was an epidemic of polio in America, and over 18,000 people died, and thousands of children were crippled by this. Well, on Monday, there were 10 of us in Glens Falls that had polio. On Friday, there was one of us still in the iron lung, still alive. That was me, Sandra Duell. The iron lung is like a big submarine, and it has air pressure that pushes your chest down and raises it up, and it breathes for you. Well, on Friday, the doctor said to my mother, Sandy isn't going to make it. They shut the machine off. I was dead, or so they thought, and they walked away, and my little pink face, because all you see is my face in the mirror, because all you see is the head sticking out of this big tanky machine. And she was just watching me just go, like losing my color. And I don't know how long she sat there. She doesn't really say, but she did talk about it. She said, I heard this clunk noise. And I went over to the iron lung, and you were kicking the iron lung. You had come back. Well, I came back. I'm a spunky little kid. I came back. God brought me back. I don't remember that NDE, but it's very important because God had given me a second chance. But I always felt guilty. Well, I always felt guilty, so I kind of always stayed into myself and didn't talk about it. Well, let me talk to you more about this bleeding NDE. In my faith, I'm told the 10 Commandments, you commit a sin, you don't go to heaven. 2 years prior to this incident, I was a single mother with the 3 kids, and I had fallen in love with a man named Carl. And he was very romantic and a whole lot of fun, and not like my first husband. My husband just didn't have those things in his life. And Carl gave me all the things a girl wants to have. I was just so happy. For a year, I was just absolutely in heaven, I thought. And he was coming down on Christmas Eve with gifts because to visit, and we were going to be married on Valentine's Day. So I was really excited because I had a surprise for Carl. I discovered that I was 3 months pregnant with his child. And I thought he'd be happy about that. He had 2 adopted adult kids. He was 20 years older than me, so my family had really disowned me. But I didn't care. I love that man so much. Well, it came Christmas Eve, and he brought the gifts down, and Eric and Katrina and Bobby had their gifts, and he got me a gift, and he said, let's go in the other room and sit down. I said, okay, fine, because I have a surprise for you. I go, I have a surprise for you too. You tell me yours first, Carl. He goes, Sandy, I think I like you. You think you like me? I think I love you. You think you love me? I can't be a father to teenage children again. We have to stop seeing each other. Now. I was so knocked out by that I just didn't say a word. Did not say a word. He left. I held myself together, and I went in and I talked to my kids and sent them off to bed. Then I went to my room. Kleenexes do not work, Mo. You get a washcloth and you cry tears like I did. And I cried and I cried, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? And, my parents have disowned me. Carl has deserted me. I divorced my husband before. What have I done with my life? I've got 3 great kids, and I have a baby. What on earth am I going to do with a baby? I have to work to take care of my kids. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, that night was the lowest, most painful time in my entire life. In my agony, I decided to end my life. I took enough pills to die, but I didn't die. I woke up the next morning and thought, oh no, I'm still alive. Oh, I was very, very sick and terrible, terrible pain. I miscarried that innocent baby on Christmas morning. Talk about guilt. There you go, a little bit more of it, right? I did not tell anybody, Mo, about this until 16 months ago when I first told my story. This has been a secret. I didn't tell Carl. He turned out to be a stalker, and I said, get away from me. And finally, he said, remember that time when you had something to tell me and I was pregnant with your child? why didn't you tell me? I said, because you didn't want me. I told him, I said, I nearly died. That baby did. I never want to see you again. Get out of my life. And he did. I never saw him again. So that was the only person I ever told. I never told my children. They did not know about this or my family until the first video went live. It's interesting. Their opinion was we never liked him, Mom. And gosh, you're strong. But that was a very, very hard time for me. And I had to remember to get my life together. I thought, God, he really brought me back from that. And I should never have gone to heaven. But remember, this NDE happened 2 years after this horrible incident and this horrible suicide. And I thought, okay, I started going to study groups, and I got some counseling because I needed counseling to help with the anger and the loss of the baby and all the things that was going on in my life. And I like going to retreats because I could just get away and get into myself, which I needed to find out I had no idea who Sandra was. I really didn't. And I remember when 1977, I believe it was, 1980, Easter weekend, it was a retreat up in the mountains. Now, I usually drive my car, but my friend drove instead, which has meant nothing happened by accident in this situation. And we got up in the mountains 50 miles from my house. We climbed the mountain, and there's the clouds, and the rain is dripping down. And it was a beautiful lodge and a fireplace and all those things. We had a lovely social dinner together. And then we went into the study room. Now, this was an unusual retreat. There were 20 people, including myself, from the same church, including our pastor and his wife. We were the participants, not the facilitators. Very different. So I thought, and the title was, Who is God? What does he mean to you? And what are you doing with him in your life? I thought, I know that one for sure, right? Well, then, oh, by the way, everyone, this is a silent retreat. Now, a silent retreat means no talking, anybody, husbands and wives. Fine, I'm used to being alone. I sat down in this big old comfy chair next to this fireplace, and I started to look at the questions that we were going to talk. And I got very upset. I said, Sandra, what on earth is the matter with you? And I got up and I threw that tablet on the floor, and I went running through those double doors, wonk, right out into the woods, out into the rain. I was going to run home, 50 miles. I didn't have a car. I was so upset for something. I was running. And all of a sudden I stopped. I go, there's all my friends watching. I thought, oh, no, Sandy, you stupid person. They're all looking like you flipped your lid. And I remember going like, and I backed up against a tree just a little bit, and I go, oh dear God, why am I here? And I opened my eyes, and I go, oops. I was completely enveloped in a column of white light. It was like being wrapped in a big, white, fluffy blanket. And I felt safe. I wasn't getting rained on. I felt loved. I felt all the wonderful feelings of being accepted and loved. I thought, wow, what is this? What on earth is this? And I remember hearing the words, don't be afraid. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. Oh my gosh, talk about validation that I'm doing what God wants me to do. He told me right there. That is something very rare and very surreal. I thought, oh my gosh, wow. Well, I held on to it for a while. Then I went back into the lodge, crawled into my bed, and went to sleep. Next morning, 8 o'clock, had I dreamt that? Did that really happen? Because it was just so unbelievable, so magnificent. It couldn't have happened to me, right? So I get up there. What happened? I said, you tell me what happened. Well, we saw you. You were in a cloud of white. You were glowing. You weren't getting rained on. You looked happy. You were all light. Did you hear any words? Sandy, I saw you. You were glowing. You looked so happy. Shirley, all of them. Barb, no. Did anyone hear any words? No. They saw the light, and they saw that I did not get rained on. So there's that many witnesses that actually saw this really happen. So now Clayton is not a pastor who usually gives up his pulpit. And I was a young woman. And he said, I want you to go to church tomorrow on Easter Sunday and give your story for the Easter story. We were there. We want you to share the story with our congregation. And that's the first time I ever shared that part of it. I've never shared the whole story. And this is why it happened. I've done hospice. I thought that was my doing something good for God. I worked for Les Pauls Hospital as a psychodrama therapist, helping those people. But on May of 2022, I was going to go to the pool with my husband and just walking into the front room to get a beach towel. And our front foyer is a large tile foyer with a large glass door. And I started to pass out. Well, the September before this May, I had had spinal surgery, a lamidectomy it's called. The 5 lumbar vertebrae in my spine were operated on, and this would destroy it if I ever crushed it, So I started to break the fall. I tried to break my fall by putting my hands behind me quickly as I was going down. I remember my head hitting the door, clunk, clunk 3 times, because there's like a ledge where the glass comes. Oh, that hurts. And I remember yelling for my husband, I can't move. Well, he finally was able to pull my arms out and pull my wedding ring off. My hands were the size of sausages. I had fractured both wrists, 2 vertebrae in my back, and injured my neck and had a really wicked concussion. People usually die from that kind of a fall. That usually is the final one. And for some reason, you've kept me here. I need you to tell me what you want me to do, because I don't know what you want me to do anymore. Please tell me. And all of a sudden, I said to Bob, get a pen and paper. I heard the words of my presentation, almost word for word, from God. And he wrote it down, and I put it into chronological order, but that doesn't seem to be what is the most important. The NDEs are far more important. But God said to me specifically, you've got to, first of all, you said, you're going to get well, you're going to get up, and you're going to tell the story, the whole story, Sandra, not just the NDEs, the good and the bad. Now, I don't want to talk about the bad because I don't want anyone to know I've been bad, and we don't want that to happen. And he specifically said, you've got to talk about Christmas Eve and the suicide and the baby. You've got to talk about the mental health struggles that you went through because you survived them. And how did you survive them? Help people. They can do that. He forgives me. He forgives you. If he forgives me, he will forgive everyone. His forgiveness is real. Tell people that. He loves us. Tell them, I love them. I love you. I love them. He promises everlasting life. Tell them that. Tell them that they have everlasting life. I will give them everlasting life. And then, during my first presentation to the IANS group, he sometimes stops me in a presentation and gives me something new altogether. And all of a sudden, Katrina was doing my bullet points with the pictures up on the wall on the screen. And he said, I want you to talk about how you healed your broken heart. Now, we all have many, many pains in our lives. We have horrible aches in our lives. And I had to find a way of healing it. So what I did, I imagined my heart being broken into a million little pieces. And sometimes you'll see an Advent box of candies that people have for the holidays. Certain faiths have them in the little boxes, and you pull out the little door and there's a candy in there. Well, picture each of those little parts of your heart having a little brass doorknob. Now, we have all kinds of things in our life that are painful. We have the little things like Aunt Bessie was mean to me, or someone in school was mean to me. We have the big things like Carl, my failed marriage, my baby. We can't deal with the big ones right away. Start to deal with the little ones. Give yourself time, forgive yourself, and open that first little door and take it out and look at it. Okay, Aunt Bessie was really a witch. And kind of throw her away and let her go. And then, well, she was nice to me once. Aunt Bessie was nicer when she was younger or something. Put her back in, something nice in there, put some sunshine in there, and close the door. Go to the next door. When you're brave enough, go to a bigger door. when you get stronger, go to a bigger door. And as you start to go through, deal with it, deal with the garbage, deal with the hurt. And what did my parents do? Did I forgive them? I did reestablish a relationship with my parents. It took a lot of work on my part, but it happened. But I worked on that. I prayed about doing that. The baby, that took a long time to get over that one. Carl, I got over that one because thank goodness I didn't stay with him. And all of a sudden you start realizing you're sitting back straighter and your chest is fuller and you don't have the weight on your chest anymore. You've healed a broken heart. So when I do live in-person programs, which I sometimes do, I'll hand out a little heart for each of them. And I ask them to hold that little heart to their chest and to listen to what I say, but what are they feeling about what I'm saying? And then take that heart home. And I say, don't put it in your pocket and don't put it in your purse and don't put it away. Hang it on the fridge with the kids' pictures. Remember who you were and how good you are and how good your heart is. And remember that. When we come back from NDEs, have you heard people talk about they're more intuitive to things or they're more attuned to other things and all of that? Well, I came back with that. I can sense when people are hurting, or I can sense where people are hurting, this type of thing. And God, for a while, brought to me 7 individuals that were in the end of their years, the end of their lives. And what I do is I actually hold these individuals in my arms and I help them pass. And that is such a blessed gift for me to have that opportunity to give them that little bit of comfort and joy. Most of us don't remember dying before. We may have, we don't know. But it's scary. There is life after life, and you can get over a lot of things, and life is to be enjoyed. But death is the next big thing, and it's only a little blip in time here. We're going to have a whole lot better life on the other side. But I hope that your listeners enjoy what I have to say. I do welcome people's comments to your website, and I always go back and see their comments. I will comment on their comments, and if they like, they're welcome to send me an email. It's sandra.rose.inspires@gmail, and I will talk to them. I have talked to a couple of people for like a couple of weeks when they're having a hard time, and I'll get them over that hard time, and off they go. They don't need me anymore, and then someone else comes along, and I help them, and off they go, and then who knows where I'm going to go next. Well, that's really all there is about Sandra Rose, other than I just can't wait to find out what God has in plan for me next month. I'm sure it's going to be interesting, but I hope that you enjoyed my message. I hope that you feel the love that I have for you, for your listeners, and for our God. And I'm so grateful to be here a part of it. Thank you so much.
Wow, Sandra's story never gets old for me. And next, none other than Bill Letson. And I want to say this before we get into it. His story is one of the most watched NDE on the entire internet. Millions of people have found it. And when you hear it, you will understand why.
I grew up here in California on the coast, normal kid. I was into sports and, a lot of nature stuff, a lot of in the woods with the, growing up and backpacking and camping and all that. Surfing came into that, and so I was outside a lot. I was in the ocean a lot, swimmer, water polo, all that stuff. Had a bunch of wild friends, surfer buddies and stuff. We were all on this swim team, and it was good. My family was awesome. I, a couple of sisters, and my mom and dad, absolutely right out of a, 50s sitcom, like Father Knows Best or something. It was a wonderful childhood. I grew up having this sort of reverence for others and stuff, and that led to the fire department. There was a thing with nature. The fire department was exciting for a kid, and then, when I hit my late 20s, it was really obvious there was something very powerful about going to somebody's home and they're having the worst moment of their life, and diving in and doing your best to make a difference. That really affected me. I loved it. And even though it's hard on the guys, this stress and stuff, it sticks around. You see the things that you see in your career, you see them their whole life, like a slideshow. But, kind of like this NDE movement, this spiritual movement, it was real. It was real emotions. It really made a difference in the world. So that was me. I started that at, on a hotshot crew at 19, and then just kept working my way up, engines and helicopters and backcountry stuff, and met my wife in college, and we've been together since I was 22, 23. And she's perfect in every way to this day. And so, yeah, I'm really blessed. It was in 1994, and I was 38. I got exposed to a patient on a call. It was during a flu epidemic. It was called the Beijing flu. We got her to the hospital. She got better, but, I took her breath into my lungs. And a few days later, I was so sick, it was crazy. I was super dehydrated, and I could tell something was seriously wrong, so I gave a call for help, and, fire department came, medics came, and ended up in the hospital. Some things went wrong there in the ER. Emergency room was full of old folks and kids, and they were taking a priority. And so everybody was well aware that this flu epidemic was, harsh. And I was young and healthy, so I was kind of set aside, and they'd get to me when they got to me. And the nurse came around, and she gave everybody the same thing. And she was in a hurry. She just plunged it in. And usually, if you're around the medical world, you count those things in. You watch your watch, and you push a little and see how the patient does. But my wife was there when that happened, and she said, your eyes rolled back and you went straight back like you were clowning around, and you were gone. And they couldn't get you back. They couldn't get a blood pressure, and they Narcaned you a bunch of times to reverse the Nubane, the synthetic morphine. It was a precursor to fentanyl. It was only on the market a year or two, and they pulled it off because it was just killing people left and right. And then a couple of years later, it got reworked, the formula, and that became fentanyl. But yeah, it knocked me for a loop. I was out cold, and my wife filled me in on all this other stuff. But to me, I was just the next thing I remember, I was flying through this black background and just this sea of stars, and they were all had color and vibe to them, and everything that was there was awesome. You never wanted to leave. And I was parading through these stars, these, energetic beings. And the emotions were nothing but acceptance and all that, love and praise. And the biggest thing on my mind was, as I was flying along, I was this huge expanded cloud. I wasn't this person anymore, this single, this separate. I belonged everywhere, it seemed. And I kept saying over and over, I was like, how in the world did I forget who I really was? It was, a really super good trick that I thought I was this guy, Bill, this dude who had this whole recipe of, who he was and what he liked and all this stuff. And all of it was it was like a game. It was absolutely understood that was not real. It was some kind of illusion, this material world that seems so solid to us and so definite. It was absolutely not real. And I was just really shocked that I fell for it. And I was flying along, and everything was just awesome. I could stay there forever. It's like I'd been let out of a closet, and I was stuffed in there. And it was like this huge relief, like, oh my God, this feels so good. Like diving into a pool on a hot summer day. And that really surprised me, because that's not anything I ever heard of or talked about. And then when I got back, I talked about it a lot until it was like frowned upon. It's all a really well-crafted illusion. I was like how in the world did I forget who I really was? Because I absolutely was this bigger version of me, although I was everything that you're talking to right now. This guy, Bill, it was seamless, and it was, a flawless change. A lot of NDEers don't even know they've died. This is really common. Because the voice in your head is the same, just this backstory has changed. I mean, it's like I was tricked, I was fooled into believing I was this single. And then all of a sudden I was in this room. It was like a clinical, and I've always said the same thing, that it had indirect lighting. There wasn't any light fixtures, there wasn't any on-off switch, on the wall. The whole room was just lit. And you're in, what I say now is like you were in the light, you were the light. And right in front of me, there were these 3 short little hooded guys, and they were just exuberant. They were like on me, or like right away asking questions. They had big smiles on their face, and they were like, how was it? What did you learn? And I was just looking at them, and they looked exactly like those guys in the movie Communion. They were super happy, and just these giggling munchkins. And they knew the whole story, because one of them came forward and he looked me up and down and could see from my energy or something that I didn't remember them. And I wasn't fearful. I wasn't trying to get out of there or anything. I was just sort of like, well, where am I now, was the thought. And he turned to the other 2, and they were all giggling and bouncing up and down. And he said, he doesn't remember us. And they all giggled uproariously. And we're super excited about that. And I thought that was funny. And I said, well, give me a second, guys. This is highly unusual for me. I just got here, and I kind of remember you, but give me a little time to sort it out. And it kind of came together after a while, because my wife, when we first got married, she was like, she'd say, in the morning when you're coming out of sleep, she says, you're giggling and you're like somebody's tickling you, and you're talking in this like nonsensical language. She said, it's really bizarre. And she said, it's like, there's a bunch of puppies climbing on you or something. And she goes, what's going on? And I said, well, there's these guys, and they're in front of me, and I can't see them. It's like there's an X'd out veil that was down. I could kind of see like the lower part of them, and I would be straining. And she would say that you're like straining, your eyes are fluttering, and you're trying to see something. And I go, yeah, I can't get a fix on them, but they're super playful. I would just wake up lit with energy. It wasn't all the time. It was maybe every 2 months or so. I would wake up and I would have had this experience where there was somebody in front of me, but I couldn't see him. There was some kind of a veil, but it had the same vibe. I think that's part of the illusion. We're not supposed to remember who we really are. We're supposed to sacrifice and suffer in this place until we stop reacting to it and realize who we really are, and just proceed in that, with that vibe. And I think that's how we, manage to get out of here, is we keep our wits about us when we head over into the other side. And it's not a big surprise anymore. You don't go through this fit of confusion where fear kicks in and then you're stuck, for another round. I think that's what's going on. We all have this other life, many other lives, other planets. Things are going on, but we don't remember them while we're here until we start remembering. And when we start remembering, then the illusion's breaking down, and that's what I think's going on. And we're able to navigate out of here. I had this thing in my youth, and then this NDE was very similar. And there was another guy, and he was in the background, and he was this tall, wispy guy. He had this spinning energy, and he came forward. He had this huge smile on his face, and you could tell he was super happy, like his favorite nephew just toddled into the place. And as he came closer, that energy just kind of enveloped me. And it was this energy of love. And it's overwhelming for us because we're not used to it. We don't experience it here, a real love. And I just wanted to fall to my knees and sob and cry because it was, I don't know, it felt so good. It was, that's what love does to us. That's why women cry at weddings and stuff. They can't contain it. And, we had a conversation, small talk. Every time I said a thought or said something, he chuckled like, like a father figure. He just was chuckling at this little toddler and everything was funny. He was smiling all the time and chuckling. The little guys were bouncing around and giggling. And I was like, well, this isn't very organized. These guys, I'd like to get out of this facility and go back where I was. Obviously, this is some sort of stop here. And I wasn't scared or anything like that, but it was just like, okay, I just like to move on from this place. It's nice to see you guys again, but I was in a really way cooler place a second ago. And so I said, well, you guys want to get on with that thing with the check, reviewing your life? Is that something that we're going to work into? And would you guys like to get that started? And the tall guy just cracked up. And very clearly he said, sure, we can do that. How do you want to start? So I just started talking about things. I didn't have any major complaints, I didn't rob a bank or anything like that. And I did have this job offer on an island that my wife wanted to, she did, it wasn't a big thing to her, but she just said, why don't you take this park service job? Because we'll be on an island by ourselves. And, we were in our 20s. I didn't want to be stuck on an island. It's an hour off the coast in a helicopter. And I wanted action. I wanted, to go to fires so I'd go now, and I'd go now in a heartbeat, and never look back at the mainland. But then it didn't seem like something it was right up her alley because she's that's how she is. But yeah, so I talked about some things like that, and I don't know, a couple other things, and then you're right in the middle of it. He goes, okay, that's enough. And he came forward, and the three little guys just were like they were reassigned. They just like shot out of there, and they came in for their, for this appearance, to show and tell. I think I'm absolutely convinced of that, and the reason I'm absolutely convinced of it is because it's, my story is so big, and it's influencing millions of people. At least planting a seed, like, okay, maybe I can look at who I am differently and lighten up a little bit and enjoy this place because it's not serious. And I think that was, because he said, you have to go back and you have things to do and they're important. And it absolutely, has occurred. I was shocked. I was like, what? Go back? I had forgotten about this place. It was out of the question going back. I saw my body, my physical body, as just a lump of something. I said it was like a banana peel. It was like this organic waste, and just throw it away. I wasn't concerned about it or with it at all, and definitely was not getting back in it. That was out of the question. And then suddenly he said, it's time to go back. And that just shocked me. And I had a bunch of stories, things like I was almost 40. I told him I'm pretty much done. And I said, my mom and dad and my wife will miss me, but everyone else will be pretty cool. And I said, even them, they'll be fine. Give them a couple of weeks. They'll be back to normal. And he laughed at all of that. And he kind of said, okay, that's good. You're going back. And he kind of stepped into me with that swirling energy. And then the room came apart like I was in a transporter, just like Star Trek. And I was beamed out of there. And it was a sinking feeling. It was a dropping feeling, like the floor fell away and I dropped. As far as physically falling somewhere, okay, maybe, but what I think really was that the frequency changed, and I was going to a lower, denser energy, and I was coming back to this realm. And these light realms, they're all around us. They're just at a higher frequency, and to them, we're like a houseplant. We're just sitting there, not doing much of anything, and they're shooting around at the speed of light. And so for your listeners or your viewers, everybody has woke up in the morning and had a feeling of falling. That is soul travel. We do it at night, and you're dropping back into your body. It's all in the pineal gland, this thing with, the third eye. At night, the pineal gland drops a little DMT on the brain, and then you escape the body and you soul travel, you move in other dimensions. You return to that eternal being that you are, this energetic being, and then you come back here. And that dropping down is dropping down in frequency and coming back into this very dense place. And at the time of death, the pineal gland splashes the brain with a huge dump of DMT, and that rockets the soul out of the body permanently. They're reporting a true experience, this DMT, this sacred fluid that, is like a doorway to these other realms. I didn't know anything about journeys out of the body or any of that Monroe, any of that stuff. But I told the doctors, and they made fun of me, and I told everyone in the place, I told them, and then my family came, and and I was just like, these guys were so cool, and we don't have any idea what we're really into, and it was out of the question. I was a total Goomba. My family looked at me like I could see the disappointment in their eyes. It's like, he's been in this like induced coma, and he's got brain damage, and I could see that they were disappointed, and so I lightened up on them, and then when I got back to work, everybody had heard, because there was firemen that came to see me in the hospital, and when I got back to work, the whole department was like, dude, what happened? Everyone's talking, you had this thing, and I'm like, sit down, I'll tell you. And I wouldn't leave anything out, and I told it, just like I told you. And after a while, there was a guy came down from the office. He was dropping off something, and he goes, hey, just so you know, they're talking about you up there in the chief's office. They think you need like a psych eval or something. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And thanks for the heads up. And so I zipped it. The closer you get to the supernatural, the closer you get to the mystical world, the divine world that's all around us. This veil, this lack of knowledge about the other side, about who we really are, it's coming down. It's the time of secrets has passed, and the veil is being lifted, and pretty soon there's going to be undeniable evidence that these non-physical beings are all around us, and they're unlimited variation, and we're in this sort of challenging role as a human being temporarily, and there's going to be all kinds of explanations as to what's going on. I think probably 20% of the population within the next year or two is going to be seeing these things regularly, and that's just going to continue to open as time goes on. As we call it global warming, we call it climate change. The frequency of the planet is going up, and we're going back into the light, and we can with different strategies, we can ride the wave, but most people aren't going to figure that out. They're going to become fearful. That's what humans do. The good news is you can ride the wave, get back to nature, get back to the sun, get back to the vibrant frequencies that are in fresh plants, drink structured water, and take time, meditate, sit quietly in silence and stillness in nature, and turn inward. because the outward stories are going to get ridiculous, but you can go inward and you'll be fine.
I told you, Bill Lett's The Story is one of those that sticks with you. Not because it's dramatic, but because of how clear and uncertain he sounds. The way he describes what happened makes it hard to dismiss his imagination. And you can see why, because millions have watched it. Let's move to Scarlett Raven. Her near-death experience is intense, vivid, and extremely personal. She came back with a perspective that changes how you look at life and the choices you might make. Let's take a look and see her story.
Hi, I am Scarlett Raven, and I had an NDE in Sri Lanka back in 2019. I was on a vacation there, and prior to this happening, I was a very new age type of spiritual person, so I was not relating to God directly. I felt triggered when I heard or said the word God, and my life was basically based on, which I found out through the NDE, that I had a really a big spiritual ego. I thought that I could manifest things and everything was up to me. Everything I did to help people was because I was helping people. And I thought that that was like a very high state of consciousness at the time. When I went to Sri Lanka, I traveled with my partner at the time. And when I landed in that country, I immediately felt ill. So what happened was we were traveling and we wanted to tour the whole country. But we went to this really southern tip first, which was a really rural area of Sri Lanka. So it didn't have a lot of services. It certainly didn't have great healthcare. And when we got to the hotel, I already started feeling a fever. I could feel that my throat was getting scratchy, but I had just spent this trip was meant to be a gift for my partner for his birthday. He chose the country. I paid for it as a gift. So I really wanted to show up and have a great time with him. And I tried to ignore my sickness. We showed up at the hotel around 10 a.m. We took a little tuk-tuk into town. He wanted to shop for jewels. Apparently, what I found out later, the reason why he wanted to go to that country was because it was a jewel vibrant country. Like, people go there to buy jewels, to make jewelry. So he was going there for his business. And we took this tuk-tuk into town. He's going into all the jeweler stores. He's looking at all the diamonds and the rubies. And all of a sudden, I start to get into this state where I can't breathe. So it feels like when you want to take a breath in, it's like I wasn't getting air. And I started getting a headache. I could feel the fever coming on. It really happened in a matter of hours. Whatever was taking over my body was coming on very, very quickly. And I think because I had just flown for 40 hours, my immune system was probably weakened. I'm an herbalist, and normally I travel with things like echinacea and different treatments like CBD oils, but this country's laws are so strict that they have firing squads if they find any cannabis or CBD on you. So I didn't bring anything. I just thought that was safer. So he's shopping and I'm telling him, like, I can't breathe. I have to go back to the hotel. Something's wrong, very wrong. And he says, well, I want to keep shopping, so just take a tuk-tuk back. And I try and find a tuk-tuk, and I remember this local guy was like, you're struggling, like, where's your hotel? I'll take you. I get back to the hotel, I lay in the bed, and I'm out. Like, I pass out instantly. And the next thing I remember is him shaking me awake. Must have been a few hours later. And at that point, I was delirious. Like, I remember seeing him, and the fever was so high. When I woke up, my body was like, the pain was unimaginable. I had never experienced pain like that. And I've had shingles, and shingles is really painful. All my joints and my muscles were in pain. My head was in pain. I had a really high fever. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know how I got to that place. I was really delirious. And immediately it was like, we have to go to the hospital. So we called the manager of the hotel. He helps us get to a hospital. And when I arrived there, due to the language barrier, I didn't know how to speak their local language. It was a very challenging experience. And this was a hospital that was like dirt floors with goats walking around. So I'm an herbalist. I thought maybe they would be giving me herbs. They have an ancient Ayurvedic medicine tradition through that country because they're so close to India. And I really wanted to experience that type of treatment. But I got a list of about 7 to 9 prescriptions. I can't remember. and I filled all of them at the pharmacy. I get back to the hotel and I'm like Googling what each one is once I got back into Wi-Fi, and I realized like there's only one that wasn't a dog medication, and it was an antibiotic. So I try and take the antibiotic, but my throat is closing up and I don't have any food in my body. And I end up just like laying back down. And at this point, all I asked of my partner, I was like, will you please go out and get me like an ibuprofen or an Advil? I have to have something to cut the pain. And when I asked him that, he was excited because he was like, yeah, I can go out and go shopping for more gems, and then I'll pick you up like an ibuprofen and I'll come home. So I'm laying there basically just counting the seconds till he gets back, thinking I can cut this pain in two, I can progress and heal. I'm young, I know my body's gonna heal. Like, I wasn't worried about dying. And when he got back a few hours later, it was a combination. What kicked me off into like having a death experience was the combination of the physical pain and suffering. The fever was maxing out the way I could think and respond to help myself. And then when he showed up back to the hotel and I was like, where's my pain pills? And he said, oh, I forgot. When he said that, it generated this kind of turmoil of emotions, realizing that the person I had traveled with just literally didn't even care about me and kind of used me to get there to buy gems for the company. And my mom had been telling me he wasn't a good person for months. So you know how like I ignored many red flags in the relationship. And this was the one domino that like knocked over everything. So in a split second, I knew who this person was. And that made, number one, my ego was shattered because I had just spent $10,000 on this person and he literally didn't even care about me. And it wasn't just the physical disease that was going through my body. It was the emotional and the ego shattering. And once all of that happened, the pain got 10 times worse. You know, when you're really sick and someone's caring for you and making you chicken soup, you feel loved, you feel better, you feel held. It's easier to heal in these circumstances. I was in a foreign country. I didn't have my family, my cats, my parents. I had no one I could call. And then I was stuck with this person who I had just realized was not a good person. I was crushed. I mean, the level of ego crushing was also very painful mentally. And at that point, I laid back down into bed. And what I had was a fraction of hope that maybe my body would heal itself. That totally left. And I honestly started thinking like, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die in this country. I don't know what disease I have. The hospital and I can't speak to each other. And this person is focused on shopping. And I laid there in the bed and I closed my eyes and I said inside of my head, I said, God, just take me now. And like I said prior to starting the story, I wasn't a God person. I had never used the word God, but there was a presence, like there was something a part of this experience that I didn't have any knowledge of prior, but something was present in that room. Some type of an energy was there letting me know I wasn't going to die. And I when I even said the word God in my head and I said, God, like, just take me. If this is how you want me to die, I thought, that's weird, Scarlett. Like, you don't use the word God. And my eyes were closed. And then all of a sudden, I went from feeling like writhing pain, the most pain that I could ever describe, to feeling nothing but pure love. And I wasn't in my body anymore. It was like I closed my eyes, I was in my body. And then I opened my eyes and I wasn't in my body. And I was surrounded by this presence of pure, unconditional love. I knew it was God. I knew I was resting in the frequency of God. And I perceived God at that time as this energetic blanket of light. And then when whatever part of my soul at that time, like I wasn't a body. So I was also just this presence of light. But in the presence of God's presence, all I could feel was love and being held. And I remember just resting in that place. And while it was happening, it's not like I could recognize what was happening. I was in the situation. I didn't recognize what happened until I got back into my body. I don't know how long I was there. I don't know if I actually lost consciousness or my heart stopped. Like, I didn't have someone in the room giving me feedback. I just have my own experience of what it was and what it felt like. And when I get back in my body, basically, it felt like no words were shared, but it felt like a sense of completion had occurred. And I was like, okay, the time here has been completed. And then I closed my eyes and I opened my eyes again, and I'm back in my body. But all of a sudden, the pain that I had, it was cut in half. And I almost starting to reflect, like, I know other people that have had NDEs, and I've talked to them about it. The experiences are so otherworldly that it takes a lot of time to process what actually occurred, because it's so different than this 3D reality. And I also didn't have a baseline of God and God's presence. So I was piecing things together while I was still sick in that bed. But it almost felt like my time with God healed my body. And then when I got back in my body, I still had pain and suffering, but I was functional again. The fever was gone. It almost felt like I had a flu at that point. Like, I still had issues breathing, and I had issues breathing for about a few months after this experience too. But I could walk to the bathroom myself, I could dress myself, I could shower. I was functional, but I felt like I had a really bad flu, maybe like a pneumonia type of a deal. And after that experience, so this happened in 2019, now it's 2025. I was very ashamed of sharing this because it was attached to that partner, and I had to share that part of the story, which would unveil the fact that I chose a really awful boyfriend, and I was embarrassed about it. I was embarrassed that that happened to me and that I spent so much money on that person. So sharing this for me took a really long time to feel comfortable with the vulnerability that it would put me in that position of vulnerability on the internet's forever. So it took me a really long time, but what happened was I started watching other people's NDEs, and I thought, I get so much hope and faith out of watching other people's NDEs. It would almost be not cool for me not to share mine. If I could just inspire one other person, I want to. And also what happened after that was I became a lover of God. So I went from like new age spiritual, super huge spiritual ego, always thinking I'm right, always thinking I'm creating my own reality, to having God move through me. Now I don't do anything. If something happens and I serve someone and they get a healing or they feel uplifted, it's because God moved through me for that person. So that experience also humbled me. And I think the humbling pain, the mental and emotional pain and suffering took months and months to get over. Not only did I have to, separate from this person and get him out of the house, but I had to go through realizing that my ego was huge and it was being crushed, and I had to totally rebuild who I was. And I directly went to the Course in Miracles and basically started studying the word of Jesus through the Course in Miracles and surrendering things to God. And my final conclusion, like the thing that I want people to know, is that if you realize, and you can call God, I don't think you have to call God God. You can say it's creator, you can say it's great spirit, but there is this energy that is outside of the 3D realm. The 3D realm we can only recognize with our 5 senses, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our ears, our touch. There's this realm that is present inside and all around this 3D realm, and it's the presence of God. And if we surrender things to God and we give things to God completely, that's when miracles occur. That's when the near-death experience I had was initiated through surrendering my life to God. I basically said, God, take me. I don't want to do this anymore. And I had zero motivation to stay on earth at that point. So it was a full 100% surrender. And that's what I've been realizing post NDE is anything I surrender fully to God, God is going to take care of it.
So it wasn't just like, now I've had multiple experiences. They're not NDEs, but multiple experiences of miracles because I've surrendered situations to God. And I know now, like, I have a visceral experience of knowing. I don't have to question my faith. God is right there. God will take anything from me. And the only reason why people suffer is because they cut God off and they focus on what's wrong in the 3D realm, and that basically just creates this bubble of like steel around you where God can't access you, because we have free will. So if we utilize our free will to invite God in, then God's going to come in and change different situations for us and create miracles. So my biggest message is to people that God is 100% real. Jesus Christ and commanding things and saying prayers that Jesus taught us 100% works. And the more humble we are, the more access we have to these otherworldly energies. So my practice now is always staying humble, always giving the glory to God. I don't want to slip back into that huge spiritual ego where I think it's on me and I'm doing all these things. I want everything to be given to God. And my whole life's mission since I've been on this planet has been to be of service and to help people realize their internal power. I was doing that way before the NDE. I just wasn't doing it in alignment with God's will prior to the NDE. Now, the way that I serve people through the organic herbal remedies I make or the online schools that I make, it's all about surrendering to God. Yes, herbal remedies can help you and can shift the frequency of your body to higher states of health, but what's more powerful is knowing that you were created by a frequency that's only pure love. And I fully believe with 100% that Eden, heaven on earth, is here for us right now, but it's a consciousness state. Because when I look back at what happened to me in Sri Lanka, I was in a really low vibratory consciousness state. I was in pain or suffering. I said, no, God, have me. I don't want this anymore. I shifted my consciousness state to completely the most purest frequency ever. That was done through a verbal internal command. So that access is here now for everybody. You don't have to get really sick and just give up your life. You can literally start using those commands now. So what I'm most passionate about now is showing people that heaven on earth is here for all of us, and it's a consciousness state. I have built my own Eden where I live, and my prayer is to inspire people like you that are watching this to just don't settle. Don't settle for anything less than heaven on earth, and God will show you how to get that for yourself. God, your intuition will start speaking to you from within. It'll be God's voice from within once you've created that relationship, and you will be guided to the perfect heaven on earth experience. And if you're ever experiencing really intense pain or suffering, surrender all of it to God. All of it. Just give it up. Say, God, take all of this, all of it, and just keep doing it until you feel the levity come back inside of you. So that's how powerful we all really are. And that's what I got from this experience. I realized true power, not ego power, which I had prior, which was very painful. Now I have the true power of knowing that if I stay humble and I always face God, I will be in heaven on earth right now. So that's my NDE, and I pray that you can see how powerful you are inside of your own body. You can see how much access you have to these divine frequencies, and it's really obtained through practice. So thank you, guys.
If you have made it to the end, you've heard 5 different people describe 5 different experiences. Yet the same themes keep showing back up. Leaving your body, clarity, love, the life review, and coming back completely changed. You don't have to know exactly what happens when we die. The question is, what will you do with it while you're still here? If you want more interviews like this, comment below, and thank you for watching.